Welcome to the Dark Wanderer Stories. This one is called The Watcher's Vale Cedar Hollow Cemetery, established long before anyone could recall, had always been just another somber plot of land on the outskirts of our sleepy New England town. Fog clung to its wrought iron gates, and the yew trees lining the gravel paths seemed to whisper secrets when the wind blew. It was the sort of place where endings felt permanent and eerie quiet held dominion. Arthur Ellison, the town's mild-mannered historian and self-proclaimed seeker of lost tales, spent many of his evenings wandering its rows, drawn not by morbid curiosity, but by a vague sense of unfinished business. Arthur had long believed that Cedar Hollow might cradle mysteries deeper than its shallow graves. Yet, on one fateful autumn evening, as dusk bled into night, he found more than he had bargained for. As daylight scattered, leaving only moonlight to dap the worn stone markers, Arthur's flashlight beam played across an unfamiliar section of the old cemetery. There, hidden behind a tangle of ivy, loomed a neglected mausoleum. Its facade bore no name, only a carved symbol resembling a watchful eye. Fascinated by the enigma, Arthur pushed the rusty gate open, a shiver racing down his spine as it clanged shut behind him. Inside, the air was still, timeless. The soft dirt floor crunched underfoot, and the walls echoed the sounds of his exploration. On a pedestal at the center lay an unassuming leather-bound book. Dusting it off, Arthur read the aged inscriptions, diary entries from a long-gone gravekeeper who detailed stories of sleepless nights spent haunted by shifting shadows and whispered echoes. Night after night, the diary revealed encounters with a sinister presence, a watcher that lurked in the cemetery's heart, observing those who dared wander too near. Arthur couldn't shake the chilling feeling that he had read those words before, their eerie familiarity feeding his growing unease. As midnight approached, with curiosity overcoming caution, Arthur resolved to unravel the cemetery's secret. A sense of dread coiled around him as he stepped beyond the mausoleum, the air now heavy, the yews murmuring in the gathering breeze. A distant flicker caught his gaze, a lantern's glow moving among the tombstones. Another visitor at such an hour seemed improbable, yet the light persisted, beckoning him deeper into the cemetery's embrace. Swept up by the moment, Arthur followed, drawn by the lantern's allure. The earth felt alive beneath his feet, a rhythmic pulse guiding his path to an ancient oak standing sentinel near the cemetery's heart. Here the lantern halted, resting upon a gravestone that appeared unmarked, except for the sigil of the watchful eye. And then he saw it, the spectral figure of a man, youthful yet ageless, standing silently by the stone, his presence unsettling in its familiarity. The Watcher, Arthur realized with a jolt of recognition, meeting eyes that mirrored his own. The realization burst over him like ice water. The Watcher's presence, the haunting familiarity, they belonged to him. In this twisted tableau of time and reality, Arthur understood that he was both seeker and sentinel, bound to this place, not by chance, but by destiny. In an instant, the cemetery was alight with color, memories of tangibly felt pasts and futures that played against his vision. Vivid tales of those who came before, those who sought, those who found. Yet every story looped back to him, the unseen chronicler, destined to wander, to watch. Arthur's disappearance days later sparked only muted whispers among the townsfolk, his absence noted merely as a curious footnote to Cedar Hollow's storied past. The cemetery endured unchanged, its mystery unsolved to new seekers who felt its call, watched over by a guardian, hidden in plain sight, forever bound to the whispers at the edge of moonlit paths. And thus, the tale continues, shaped and sculpted by the unseen eye, a tale timeless as the stones themselves. If you like the Dark Wanderer stories, remember to like and subscribe.
Beneath Stillwater. In the small town of Stillwater, where the hills seemed to cradle more graves than living souls, the Greenwood Cemetery stood as a silent testament to the passage of time. Its wrought-iron gates, twisted with age and rust, creaked under the weight of unspoken stories. I had taken the job of caretaker, enticed by solitude and a break from the cacophony of city life. What I found instead was a place alive with secrets. This cemetery, I was told, was special. There was an oddity about it, an undercurrent you could feel in the soil, a hum beneath your boots whenever you walked the paths. The indents of those gone lingered heavily upon the air, a heaviness felt most profoundly when dusk spilled shadow over stone and soil. On my first night as caretaker, deep in the midst of a restless sleep, I awoke to the unmistakable sound of crying carried through my window. It was soft, barely a whisper, but urgent enough to draw me from the warmth of my bed into the cool night. Armed with a flashlight and the notion it was probably just a trick of the breeze, I stepped out into the cemetery's hold. The moon hung bright and full, painting tombstones in silver and shadow. As I followed the path towards the weeping source, there was a magnetic pull to the air, drawing me toward a section of the graves I hadn't yet explored. There, tucked beneath the gnarled branches of a centuries-old oak, was a grave unlike the others. Where others had flowers or tokens, this one was bare but for a single inscription. From dust we rise, in dust we remain. As my eyes scanned the inscription, the air seemed to shift, bringing with it a chill that sank deep into my bones. And then, just beyond my line of sight, movement, a glint of a figure half seen among the recumbent stone angels. Adrenaline spiked through my veins as I tried to rationalize the impossibility of it, testing my sanity. I approached, my hands trembling around the handle of my flashlight. The figure didn't move as I drew closer, didn't evaporate like a spectre ought to. Instead, it became clearer, features soft and sorrowful, clad not in ghostly whites but the faded garb of a bygone era. It was a woman, her eyes like pools of forgotten time, holding a bouquet of wilting lilies. What are you? I managed, my voice a dry whisper. Guardian, she replied, voice sonorous with untold lifetimes. Keeper of the forgotten. As she spoke, images flickered through my mind. Moments, sensations I had no connection to, yet felt with acute clarity. Lives lived and lost, the essence of Stillwater woven into my very being in an instant. The air tightened, closing in as if the cemetery itself pulsed with awareness. My disbelief wavered against the night's mounting tension, grounding me in this reality beyond logic's reach. She gestured to the grave, speaking of a bond, a duty bound by more than flesh, tied to those who watch and keep vigil over the souls adrift. In my head I heard the whispers of others like me, whispered warnings about the dangers of binding oneself to the restless. I staggered back, fear coiling tightly around conviction. I hadn't signed up for any otherworldly guardianship, yet the certainty of some unbidden truth pulled me back toward the grave like an inexorable tide. I felt the draw, the call of what lay within, but instincts far older ignited a point of resistance. The figure began to fade, her form losing cohesion with the approaching dawn, leaving only a fleeting warmth grasped from her touch. And as light broke over the horizon, sliding over headstones as if drawing breath, the air sighed a long-held breath. I crouched beside the grave, fingers brushing its carved surface. There was a choice here. One whispered through countless layers of dust and memory. In that final breath of night, I chose not to bind myself, A caretaker, yes, but to live beyond the shadowed undertakings of the watchful and lost. And so as I rose with the sun to greet the waking world, Stillwater felt unchanged, untouched by the night's terrors. But I knew the truth. It watched still, those secrets unwritten but ever present, a legacy I would carry not in stone but in heart, until another comes to walk those whispered paths in uncertain moonlight, within the chorus of souls refused to be forgotten.
Whispers at Gravesend. The sprawling metropolis around Gravesend Cemetery buzzed with the relentless energy of modern life, oblivious to the hushed secrets whispered from the depths of hallowed grounds. Nestled between towering skyscrapers and the inexorable march of urban sprawl, this cemetery was an anomaly, a relic of the past surviving amidst the steel and concrete jungle. I hadn't planned on becoming its caretaker. An unexpected inheritance from a distant relative, one I hardly knew, left me with ownership of this small piece of history. At first, I saw it as an opportunity, a quiet retreat from my relentless, tech-driven life, where I could escape into the whispers of an old world. My first visit was under an overcast sky, a blanket of gray clouds casting the cemetery in a spectral light. Cast-iron gates guarded the entrance, creaking open with an eerie reluctance that set the tone for what lay beyond. Inside, rows of gravestones marked the city's forgotten citizens, those whose stories had been swallowed by time, yet left indelible marks on the soil. It was quaint during the day, unremarkable even. But as evening descended, bringing with it a sharp, chilling breeze, I began to sense a presence, an awareness that I was no longer alone. Lights from the city danced in the distance, a reminder of the life I had chosen to leave behind, yet binding me to the world just enough to prevent complete separation. The first night was when it truly began. The whispers, faint at first, like wind brushing through ancient oaks, but growing more distinct with every hour I spent in that place. I convinced myself they were echoes, tricks of sound carried over from the city streets until I heard my name. It was unmistakable, spoken with a familiarity that knotted my stomach and quickened my pulse. No one else was there, no living soul at least, yet the voice seemed real, tangible. Ignoring it was impossible. Sleep came fitfully, dreams interwoven with faces and names I had never known but deeply felt. Determined to understand, I began to investigate by day. I unearthed aged records within the mausoleum, a history of the restless souls bound to this patch of earth, their lives linked by patterns I couldn't yet see. Each story led back to a series of unsolved disappearances spanning decades, whispers of untouched justice echoing through the annals of time. Obsessed, I spent days piecing together fragments, drawing connections others had either failed to notice or chosen to ignore. And each night, the cemetery spoke louder, the voices coalescing into a chorus that promised revelation, but withheld it with teasing cruelty. It all came to a head one stormy night. The city skyline blurred by rain pounding the headstones like skeletal fingers drumming a funeral march. Lightning cast the cemetery in stark relief, each flash illuminating new horrors lurking just beyond perception. Guided by insistent whispers, I found myself drawn to a secluded corner of Gravesend, where a particular gravestone stood unmarked, its surface worn smooth as if by countless repentant hands. I felt the pull of truth beneath its grounded presence, a secret buried but not forgotten. Armed with resolve and a shovel, I worked through the night, rain-soaked and driven by a need that had taken root deep within my bones. The earth gave way to my frantic digging, revealing the lid of an old wooden chest, its lock rusted by time yet untouched by the earth's embrace. Inside, I discovered something both expected and dreadful, a collection of belongings from each of the vanished, kept as if waiting for someone to find them, to bring closure to restless spirits. The realization hit with the force of a thunderclap. Someone amidst the living had been doing this, and their story was buried here, a darkness hidden in plain sight. As dawn crept over the horizon, I surfaced from the ground with the chest in tow, the voices falling silent, their narrative finally heard. The cemetery was no longer a place of whispers, but a monument to truths unveiled, inviting the living to take heed of history's lessons etched in stone. Though the world rushed on, oblivious to the revelations of the dead, Gravesend remained, a guardian of truths only the brave or the foolish dared to uncover. For as long as I breathed, I vowed to serve as its voice, to share its stories, binding past to present within the heart of a relentless, uncaring city. The cemetery was no longer my escape, it was my calling, a place where the dead taught the living the purest form of silence, and every whisper held a story waiting for ears willing to listen.